So,
Yes.
good evening, everybody. It's 8 o'clock and time for yet another episode of Marvelous Medicine. Today we have Dr. Puneet Dhar, who is the professor and head of GI and HPB surgery and liver transplant at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Rishikesh. Dr. Puneet did his MBBS from Maulana Azad Medical College, MS General Surgery from Safdarjung Hospital, and MCA GI Surgery from GB Pant Hospital. After completing his education in Delhi, over a period of time, he somehow landed up down south, where he was the head of Department of Gastrointestinal and Hepatobiliary Surgery at the Amrita Institute of Medical Sciences and Research Center, Kochi. In between, he did his senior clinical fellowship in transplant surgery at Addenbrooke's Hospital, Cambridge University, and also worked there as a locum consultant. Dr. Puneet has over 60 publications and has contributed to 14 book chapters and monographs. He's on the editorial board of many journals and has been the principal investigator in many trials. He's an avid teacher, a member of several scientific bodies, and has delivered many prestigious orations. Thank you, Dr. Puneet, for readily accepting our invitation to share your offbeat kind of situation where most people move from public sector to private sector. You actually did the reverse. Moderating the session will be Dr.RA Sastry. He's a professor and senior consultant in GI and HPB surgery at Krishna Institute of Medical Sciences, Hyderabad. Dr. Sastry happens to be an alumni from my college, IPMA Pondicherry, where he did his MBBS, and he did his MS in surgery from PGI Chandigarh. Dr. Sastry did his higher training in laparoscopy from National University of Singapore and training in liver surgery and transplantation from the University of Pittsburgh. He was conferred the FRCS by the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons of Glasgow. Dr. Sastry actually founded the Department of Surgical Gastroenterology at the Nizam Institute of Medical Sciences and served the institute as a professor and head of the department and retired as a dean. He also has several scientific publications and has contributed chapters to 8 textbooks and delivered 8 prestigious national orations. He was the past president of the Indian Association of Surgical Gastroenterology and the immediate past president of the Indian chapter of International Hepato-Pancreatico-Biliary Association. Thank you, Dr. Sastry, for sparing the time and joining us. Over to you, Dr. Puneet.
Thank you for those kind words. I think, first of all, it's an honor that I'm not sure that I deserve to be here and to have Dr. Sastry, who's been one of my role models, in my surgical career, to be there on the other side is an absolute honor, and I'm deeply humbled by this gesture of his to agree to moderate.
Yeah, shall I have a few words to start with?
Yes, sir, please.
Thank you, Dr. Vidya, for the introduction. It's indeed a privilege to be in this very popular forum. Today's theme is a little general and more personal and somewhat philosophical, but I think it should be of interest to the young surgeons in the making in guiding their future prospects. We've all seen how the public and the private sectors in medical profession have been vying with each other. And it's difficult to say which is the loser, which is the gainer. But then, as we have seen, attrition rates have been quite high in public institutions. It has almost come to a pass where jobs in public institutions are treated as a kind of stepping stones for the obvious greener pastures in the private sector. And this is in spite of the traditional advantages of government jobs, like stability and the terminal benefits. It's impossible to remove somebody from a government job. That is considered a lot of advantage by some people. And then most importantly, the good terminal benefits, particularly with the increasing lifespans. I know a few people in their 90s who draw a pension which is more than their maximum salary drawn in their active service. See, that is the kind of advantage when you are sort of disabled and, you will be looking for, some kind of a living in nuclear families. You don't want to depend on your children. So the public institutions career comes to your rescue in such a situation. In spite of this, there is a tendency to move out because probably the weaknesses in this sector outweigh the perceived advantages. First and foremost, of course, the earnings, which are just incomparable. The traditionally lax administration in the government sector, you have to fight at every step to move a paper in the long red tape. The poor infrastructure, the equipment, the gadgetry, and the poor maintenance of them. And all this with equal or more pressure from the patients and their attendants, with the result that doctors in the government sector have become the most vulnerable as far as physical violence is concerned, which unfortunately is assuming epidemic proportions. On the other hand, private institutions are better organized, have better infrastructure and maintenance, definitely have a better business models, which also, work in your favor. Not necessarily always ethical, but not overtly unethical either, managed quite subtly. And you have the market forces, to blame, considering healthcare also an industry. And your own personal factors, say the intention to make up for all the expenses you have incurred in your training programs, long training programs. And of course, the comparison with your peers from the other domains. So shift from public to private sector has become quite common. But then when someone shifts from a private sector to public sector, eyebrows are raised. It gets interesting. And we have one of the eminent GI surgeons who made not only his mark as in a private institution in Kochi, the Amrita Institute, as a head, but also in the contemporary academic circles. He is a force to reckon with, and who, after 20 years of successful professional life, made such a switch. Without stealing too much of his time, let me invite Puneet to share his thoughts on what prompted him to shift and what were the concerns and how does he feel about it now. But before inviting him, I would just like to add to 2 or 3 more things about Puneet, which Vidya had missed. He is an avid bird watcher. And then perhaps I would call him the Salim Ali of medicine. He's an avid photographer too. And when he travels, half of his baggage is the bulky professional camera with all those weird accessories. He is not only handsome, true to his ethnic origin from Kashmir, but extremely knowledgeable. Right from the types of chicken work in Hazratganj in Lucknow to the flora and fauna of Dal Lake. It's really a treat to have a long walk with him. And his collection of movies is phenomenal. Old, award-winning, Oscar winners, and name it, he has in any movie in his repertoire. I always go, with a 1 TB hard disk whenever I go to our regular meets to copy some of his movies. That is Puneet for you. Puneet, your experiences now.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Dr. Sastry. I think it's because of the giants like you who set up the, the public institutions, people like you, Dr. Kaushik at SGPGI, GB Pant, AIMS Delhi. I think it's because of that that most of the specialties owe their origin. It's as both of you have said, it's a bit of a conundrum that currently now the best centers do end up being the private centers in most of the fields that we have. My own stories, pretty much like I had a fantastic department at Amrita. I mean, it's a dream, although we call it private to public. I think it's more like it's a religious trust organization, which didn't have, only motive was not profit. So they did a lot of charity work as well. So extremely satisfying. I mean, everybody thought I was crazy, thinking of leaving a setup like that, a dream department like that. And there's no doubt I had some of the best colleagues. We had probably the largest department in the country. I'll try and put that up as a background, all my colleagues who were there. It's a fantastic feeling to have been able to set up that kind of a place where we were doing all cutting edge work. These are all my, my colleagues who were there. This is at my farewell there. You can see how happy they are to let me go. So, some of the finest human beings I can think of, most of them can set up world-class departments anywhere across the country or the globe. Some of them have as well. But why they stood with us, I'm still not clear, because they're such, professionally sound, ethical. I learned so much from all of them that, I think it helped my own maturity as a surgeon, and the team built up. But as it built up, I started getting, despite all the good work done by these people, I started feeling a little bit guilty after 20, 21 years that, they're doing all the work and I'm getting all the credit. So I guess before the burnout actually happened and I could see it coming, I didn't want to be competing with all the people I had really taught with. Out of the blue, I'd gone to London Institute for an interview for the assistant professor's interview there. And there was because, it was happening after a long time, there was a huge backlog of departments. And while I was waiting for our section to start, as the external expert, I suddenly chanced upon this long, I'll try and put that up as a in the Learning General Surgery site that are linked to that article. But the article was a very interesting thing with that, which, it's so funny how one thing can actually change your entire life. So it actually talked about, how our professional decline comes in life. He had compared Bach and Darwin. Charles Darwin, who at 25 was one of the brightest scientists, and by 27 he was the most famous person in the world. He went on to, in the next 10 or 20 years, went on to become even more famous, and in the scientific pecking order was probably the pyramid of his species. But with time, as by the time Gregor Mendel came in and a lot of other stuff came in, he realized that he couldn't keep up that pace. And, the story goes on that he was an embittered old man and he never really changed. He kept thinking that he has to, do better, be better and all that. And then he goes on to compare with Bach, the musician Johann Sebastian Bach, who was from the late Baroque period, with more than 1,000 musical compositions to his credit, the most famous musician of his time, hands down. But, within, as the decline in music and all these creative fields comes a little earlier, his own son and all other, colleagues, contemporaries, they were ushering in the classical music at that time, which was sweeping through Europe. And he realized that soon his kind of music would be passé. So instead of, being an embittered old man like Darwin, he chose to do what he thought could be the best. And he became a teacher, actually. And not only did he, go on to describe a whole lot of idioms like the art of the fugue and, so many other things, and trained a whole lot of students in the art of music, how to appreciate music. He became actually a loved, forever, and he died a very happy old man. So that set me thinking as to, what is my legacy ever going to be, So and then as it would happen, the next three places I went as an external examiner. The second examiner had come from AIMS Rishikesh saying that, I've just come from an interview here and there's nobody there for the professor's post. And each of them individually, just like yourself suggested that it would be a good place for bird watching. It's one of the most spectacular, I think, institutions in the country. The setting is picture postcard. It's if you think Heidelberg is good or Geneva is good, this is probably even better. It's just south of Rishikesh. You've got picture postcard mountains. You have the Ganges flowing from my office window is a picture window of the Ganges flowing. On the opposite side of the river is the Rajaji National Park. So it's pristine. The campus itself is beautiful. So, having looked at that, all these colleagues of mine said that, why don't you go? I'm sure you're going to love watching all your birds. And so, I mean, although it might sound that I was being very a sacrifice or something like that. I think that's too pompous a term because, or maybe even perverted, because I think we always do it for ourselves. So, to avoid that burnout, I thought, moving to a place where there's actually so much, I would be so much more wanted, like Bach, would be, a good idea. And it did really turn out to be a change. Not many people at the, as they're turning, I was 57 at that time. And all the AIMS advertisements actually said the age limit was 58. So I said, it's now or never. If I don't take this plunge now, I can never, I'll always be blaming myself that I didn't, think of doing it. And I think it was much easier for me because I've, being an army brat, I've been used to, I feel like a true Indian. I feel at home in, when I had to move from, whether it's Kashmir or it's Delhi or, the South, I didn't bat an eyelid even when, people thought I was crazy going to Kerala at that time, 20 years back. I think fitted in like a glove. Even when I went to England for the transplant training, I didn't feel I was in in an alien country. I felt actually probably, more a part of it than in many parts of our own country. I mean, Northeast probably I'd feel more out of place. So I think that worry that I'm going to go to a different place wasn't there. So it was easier for me to, do that. Also in a lot of the, the IASG and other bursary sessions, the smaller meetings where we have these, 30 odd students who are there, much closer, narrower meetings where I used to get these offbeat, out of the box topics like private versus public, negotiating your salary. And I don't know why I was given that. I've never negotiated my salary in my life. I don't even know how the pay scales are set here in government service. But, in those informal sessions, the students kept telling me, you're plugging for the government sector, but you're sitting pretty yourself, making money in a private sector. So is that fair? And, that really, really hurt. And I said, I can always go. And they said, but would you? So I said, what the heck, I think the biggest thing was the challenge that I could move my cheese at this age. And I would say I will never regret it. It was a little bit of a comfort, issue that you don't want to move outside your comfort zone. You're used to the whole setup, with all these people here. Only if a VIP comes do I need to go into the theater, or if somebody wants me to demonstrate a particular technique or something like that, which also I think by the time 2 generations have passed, it's fairly passé. So moving out of that comfort zone, I think was extremely rejuvenating. And I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how what a change it was. I am about 10 years younger. I lost about 10 kilos of weight right away because of the more active lifestyle here. My, I'm sure I changed my life because if I had stayed on, I had, when they inaugurated the fibroscan here, I had grade 3 steatosis, grade 3 fibrosis in the liver. And while within the last 2 years, that's actually improved. So, I don't know if, I've actually changed my life by that thought process. So like I said, we might think that we are doing it for others as a social service or giving back to society, which I pompously must have, some bit of it must be, think of it must be going back at the back of my head. it was there, I don't doubt, because I think society has given me unhesitatingly whatever I wanted. I mean, everything that I wanted in life was given to me without having to worry about it. The Almighty has been extremely kind. So I thought at this stage we should give back to society as well. But then what when you become a little unselfish, I think you get even much more, you become even more selfish gains you get from that, So, and, it's been, even salary wise, people thought that, you got used to a certain kind of a salary. Would you be able to adjust to a low salary? So it's so bizarre how, I believe in karma, that if, the moment I moved, 2 months later, the pandemic hit, and the entire private sector was reeling under salary losses, whereas, my pay was protected. So, I don't think anything can change. So whatever's written is going to happen. If you're fated to drive a BMW or a Porsche, you will. I went to the UK in Cambridge the second time round as a local consultant because, I still was maintaining my GMC registration. And the Cambridge guys were a short of a faculty at that time. And they said, even though you're not trained here, we would love to have you here. And, as a locum, you don't even have the responsibility. And when I reached there, there was a BMW car waiting for me, 7 Series, free, waiting for me. It was, I had to put it to my name because of the insurance purposes. I drove it around for 1 year, and the consultant there said, "You're doing me a favor because my son, who's going to turn 17 next year, can start using this car. So you're actually keeping it in, charge for him." So likewise, my senior house officer, when I used to go for the outreach postings, they had a small hernia clinic where I used to go and do daycare surgery there. So he actually broke his arm. The senior house officers are the richest guys. So, he had a Porsche. So I had to drive the Porsche up and down. So I think if it's written that you're going to drive those, and I realized, it doesn't really matter, getting from point A to point B. I don't need to have it in my name. So if all those things don't matter to you, I think there's enough and much more to get in the government sector as well. Particularly the AIMS, they have a fantastic sort of milieu for research, for a whole lot of other, things. Another big, huge advantage that the AIMS has is that, every time you say, oh, the government should do this, the MCI should do this, and we should change this. And, we don't realize that we are the, the media of change that we can bring in. Pata Radhakrishnan had the idea that social media would be a fantastic tool for training. So he got together a group and, started the Learning General Surgery, which has got more than 40,000 subscribers right now, and is a fantastic exchange medium, not only for, routine didactic stuff, but I think what is more important now in this time and age, when you can get all this information at the, punch of a button, but all the thought-provoking, topics that are discussed there, what is important in life, how to communicate, what is bad news, how, a lot of those things, how we shouldn't be jousting with professional colleagues. So many important topics, which, I mean, I'm so happy that the youngsters have an opportunity to see all that. So likewise, we had started up with Dr. Sastry, Dr. Pradeep Ribala at Asian Institute, and SGPGI. We had set up, webinars concept in the through the net for all the national board and MCH, so that we can standardize the students all over the country. So we have regular classes online long before the pandemic started, long before it became fashionable to do so. It was already there in surgical gastroenterology. So I think we brought about that change without the government even asking us. The National Board of Examinations made me the webinar coordinator only this year, last year, to coordinate the similar sessions officially for the NB, but we had been doing it for much longer. Likewise, at the Honour Institute, it's not shackled by the Medical Council of India. So there was a potential for changing a lot of things that we believe in. So the exams actually changed. So I think we were probably the first exams which happened online for the undergrads. The general surgery department did the first. I was there for the mock examiner for the centups, but they went on to do the first pandemic time exams, and then that became now the standard of care. So I mean, a lot of things that you can change, you can do it. They shifted to a complete OSCE system. There are no long answer questions for the undergrads at all. It's all MCQ or OSCE, OSPE based. So a whole lot of things that you can do, it was possible for me to do. At the same time, the work-life balance, which was, fantastic here, unbelievable. I invite all of you, you must come down. I've just recovered from COVID last week, so I'm not much of a threat to you now. So please, all of you are welcome as well.
So it looks like, you had the middle-age blues, and then, fear of a burnout, and then you made a choice of shifting. It's not really a pushing concern there that you're missing some academics. It's when you think of an academic institute, switching over to an academic institute, the first thing that comes to a person is probably you're missing an academic atmosphere, the ambience, and then you want to get back to the academic track. That probably is not true in your case because Samrita is equally academic oriented. But having taken this path, would you recommend the same path to people who are, sort of well entrenched in the private sector? And at what stage?
Yeah, I think absolutely. You bring up a very, very important point, which, when I was moving from GB Pant to Amrita 21 years back, the only thing I, was feeling bad about was that I will not be able to, I never realized at that time how much I enjoyed teaching. So, I will never have the professor added on to my name was my biggest regret of moving to the, I think at heart, I was always a public doctor. I probably wouldn't have moved out of the public sector if I hadn't, as some of you know, my background, why I actually moved there. I was the first MCH, officially recognized MCH in the country. And GB Pant was the only, department in the Central Health Services which had this department. But I was shunted out to a vague hospital where there was not even an anesthetist. So, it took me, I represented up to the health minister, the central health minister, the state health minister, and none of them could do anything, and all the clerks and everybody had changed. And then it was one, the head clerk out of the blue who thought of a trick and posted me back. But I realized, how tenuous my position was, and anytime anybody could chuck me out. So that's the time I, really chose to go. But like you said, the thing which I said is, I took a conscious decision. I will not be. But like I said, karma, the Amrita itself became a medical college, became a a prestigious deemed university. So I had the luxury, but that's not a luxury often offered to a lot of people. You have managed to change the private institutions into an academic institution by virtue of your long-standing academic background. But a lot of the other centers, it's not possible. It's not encouraged. So I think we really need a blend of the two in the the way they have in the US or even in the UK, where everybody is actually a part of the NHS, the National Health Service, and they might have a private practice. So I think for a country like India, we need it even more than the UK. And everybody, there's so many good people in the private sector who are more academic than at least half of the, Dr. Nandi's article on exposing all the academics in many of the medical colleges showed us that many of them are not actually academic. They're attached to colleges, but they're not, really passing time there. So I think if we have a blend, and if these people have the opportunity to go like I had, I think it is fantastic. And even for me, I think, I definitely learned a lot. Medical pedagogy, I learned more formally only after joining in AIMS, because they have formal systems of doing that. Otherwise, we were learning on the job. The simulation-based surgery, we have one of the excellent simulation centers here. There's a very dynamic director here at that time, a surgeon himself. The entire setup, very active general surgery, surgical oncology departments. And I've always, wondered why in a private setup, people don't get together, are hesitant to get together because of money, because, each one is biting on each other's territory. The turf is for money. But I've never understood, you have 6 units in a government setup and they're all fighting with each other. If they're combined, if they hold hands and get their data together, it'll be better series than all the Western data that we base our guidelines on. but we are all, a prey to that kind of system, that we are not, friendly with each other. So I think, yes, Dr. Sastry, to answer your question, it's a fantastic opportunity to get back. I became a part of, they looked on me as a senior person. So I looked up, I joined all the research ethics committees, and in those processes, I think I learned a lot. I probably did contribute as well, but I think I learned a lot of new things as well. We formed the, student clubs. Being with the students, absolutely rejuvenating. I was Dean of Students Welfare for a short while. So in that time, we set up student clubs, the sports activities, even during the pandemic and all that. So I think absolutely true that, having the academic setup, the research, encouraging the undergraduate, postgraduate research is a fantastic way if you can actually go into a government setup.
To that extent, I probably, I should consider you are very lucky. It's not really, from a private to a public, but from a semi-public to a public. Everybody is not as lucky as you at your stage to move into an academic stream, because they would fall short of the qualifications. See, when you have worked for a long time in the private sector as just a specialist or a consultant, you don't have the required qualification to get back to the academic stream. As a matter of fact, I should consider myself also, in a similar situation, but way back to start with. In my, just 3 years after I had passed out, I don't want to get into all those details, but then immediately after my 3-year senior residency, like you did to Kochi, I went to Trivandrum and joined the Sri Chitrathirunal Institute of Medical Sciences for cardiac surgery. I did cardiac surgery for 1.5 years. Extremely good. Like people like Dr. Valiathan was great. But then I didn't see myself in cardiothoracic surgery for my life, and I had to come out. And then, see, there was an opportunity to get into the private sector. I went and joined the private hospital in Cochin, spent 3-4 years there. But the academic itch is the one which prompted me to get out. Money was there was plenty of work. But then at that stage, are you, really rotting? Is money all for you? That kind of thinking came. And then the first opportunity I had in Hyderabad, immediately lock, stock and barrel switched over here, resigned there and came without even knowing how this institute would ever function. But then as it did very well, and there are absolutely no regrets. So to that extent, that was very early in the career. So probably if I have to advise somebody, I'll advise them in the first 5 years of your career, you decide whether you get onto the academic stream. Because later it becomes extremely difficult to get to the academic stream and at your level. See, there may be some lateral entries, but then lateral entries are quite difficult. And then you may not get to a place where you really like it. And the moment you go to that kind of situation, you would start regretting from day one. Because you're going from a place where, which is well organized, to a sort of disorganized sector where you have to run after everything. And then every day you would regret, why did I ever come out? So your case probably would be an exception. But having moved here, do you see any further academic advantage? Say things which you could not do there. Personally, I would say it's extremely difficult unless you have a setup like an Amrita Institute, to have an academic programs running in a private hospital is extremely difficult. Colleagues will just not join with you. They have their own timings. Each one is his own boss. There is no hierarchical system. There is, the residents are also distributed there. There's nothing in common. In spite of all your attempts, maximum you can get 1 or 2 sessions in a week. Not like a daily session which you had in your academic institution. So that kind of, I'm just warning people, not taking a cue from you and jump over from, well-established system. Don't move your apple cart so fast. A settled apple cart sometimes, of course, we're all conservative, most of us, senior people at least. But academic stream, I think you'll have to decide much before. It's extremely difficult to get into after a certain age.
Dr. Shastri, Dr. Kapoor wants to say something.
Yeah, Dr. Kapoor, yes.
Dr. Kapoor, please unmute yourself, sir.
Good to hear, Puneet. Actually, Puneet, as Dr. Shastri mentioned, is an avid bird watcher to the extent that now when I go somewhere and I see a beautiful looking bird, the first person I remember is Dr. Puneet. And I always take a picture and send it to him that, look, I have seen this bird. So what I would like to say that people who have had long innings in government institutions at the middle level, or once they are approaching the end of the term, they move to corporate sector, primarily because government doesn't allow them to continue to work beyond a certain age. And I think mostly to make some more money, because in government jobs, money is limited. And though money is not everything, but it is important. So at the same time, I think once you have made a certain amount of money, then probably it becomes useless. You can't use money beyond a certain limit. So my point and suggestion is that people who have worked in corporate sector for a long time, have had a good amount of money, have children settled, both professionally and financially, should think of coming back to academics. Now, as Dr. Shastri said, government institutions would not allow them to come back to academics. But now, fortunately, we have some few good academic institutions in the private sector also. And because they are in the private sector, they are a little flexible in appointing people, in taking people, in adjusting people. So that is one option which some of my colleagues who have been in corporate sector for a long time and who probably are missing, because they are academically oriented, are missing academics in the corporate sector, should think of coming back to some of these private teaching institutions like the one where I'm working now after finishing my term at HCPGI, that is the Mahatma Gandhi Medical College and Hospital in Jaipur. So I think the reverse journey should also be kind of promoted and encouraged. Thank you.
No, absolutely true. I mean, to answer Dr. Shastri's first question, he's asked whether, personally for me, was there any difference going also academically? Yes, at least in a couple of areas, I felt I grew a lot, and to fight Alzheimer's and all that. I think if we are continuously learning, that's good. The two fields one was the medical humanities. I realized the importance. It was always there at the back of my mind, but as a formal sort of component of medical teaching, I really was exposed to here. And the second was, Dr. Nandi, who's also fortunately from our branch, is the president of AIIMS Rishikesh. And because of him, he had, his experience in starting a journal, the National Medical Journal of India, when he was at AIIMS Delhi, he started another journal with which, I mean, fortuitously, the first meeting was the day I joined in. So he grabbed me and took me to the editorial board, and I've been there since then. Again, the association with that broadened a whole lot of my outlook to research work, as well as looking at what is important, what we need in our society. And that's why I've been pestering some of you to actually write in for that. We also started using artwork at the back of that, so combine the medical humanities with the journal. So we're probably the first Indian journal with the art on the back. And Dr. Shastri asked me at one of the meetings, what is the correlation? So I hope to answer that soon and in a future article on that. But the combination of those two actually also helped me to grow personally and professionally. So, but as Dr. Vinay said, sometimes this enforced retirement can be a boon. I mean, we see it as a bane, but I can see Dr. Kapoor, instead of being retired, he is retired, and he has Dr. Sastry as well. They have set up two fantastic departments, which I can see are going to be, in the future, the growth is going to be tremendous. So we are having a ripple effect because of their expertise in the. So I think rather than having watertight sectors of private, public, and all that, I think it's important if we can inspire people to, especially the youngsters, as Dr. Shastri stressed, to join the academic institutions, whether they are private or public. But I think an academic atmosphere makes your growth ensured. There's no doubt about that, because you end up stagnating if you're not a part of the academics there. Professor Nandi at 85 in Gangaram, he has transformed Gangaram into a GRIPMER, the Institute of Medical Sciences. His library budget was more than Amrita's budget, and because of that, I actually forced them to change. And now, of course, we have a very good budget. But a lot of those kind of things are an advantage in these settings. AIMS, Rishikesh has a fantastic library with remote access, and you can be anywhere and still access the library. So a lot of those advantages are there. So being attached to a academic institution, if you can be at a younger age, nothing like it. So I would add to Dr. Shastri's exhortation to the younger colleagues that please consider all the. There's a I don't think we're at the threshold of a boom in medical institutions opening the country. So like he said, I was lucky enough to have that opportunity to come here with my experience. But I think all of you have the opportunity. There are a million names opening. All of them have seats begging. So in the super specialties, it's even easier because I'm aware all the professors of GI surgery in all the AIMS are going begging at the moment. So anybody who wants to join is going to be taken in with open arms. So yes, it is important.
Professor Balal, would you like to add something, sir?
Yes, please. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Dr. Balal,
yes, sir.
Please.
Yes, sir.
I'm considering myself rather old for this particular discussion because year 2000, I was the chairman of the state chapter. At that time, our Rajiv Gandhi Medical University has just been started. What has been told so far, I would emphasize that part. If engineering colleges and industries could join so well, why is it that the private sector and the medical colleges can't join together? I requested the vice chancellor at that time, who was a close friend of mine, to start a pilot project in Bangalore involving Victoria Hospital and the Manipal Hospital. But for reasons beyond my control, we could not succeed. I think it's a very good suggestion because the private hospitals are doing very well and a lot of academic activities. With due apologies, of course, our friend today is in one of the good institutions, but many private medical colleges lack staff as well as patient. For example, my own city of Mangalore, it's called a city, we have a population just beyond 6 lakhs. And for your kind information, we have 10 medical colleges. In addition to that, we have 2 homeopathic colleges, 2 Ayurvedic colleges. When I was a student, when I was a teacher, I'm talking the 20th century, not the 21st century. Our college was only one, and it took to about 100 miles radius. There was no other tertiary hospital. Although it was a government setup, we could do the best available treatment under the circumstances. I'm talking of pre-endoscopy, pre-laparoscopic era, when most of it was open surgery, and we could do so many things. So it's time for, I think, the authorities higher level to bring in some sort of a exchange program where, as suggested, teachers could move as visiting process and teach. At the same time, PGs could also move from the private to the public sector, work there. For example, I was telling them, Victoria Hospital, probably these boys would do appendix perforation, etc., day in and day out. Whereas in a Manipal hospital, a 5-star hospital, most appendices are treated by the consultants, either senior or junior. Hands-on experience in many private hospitals, I'm sorry to say, is very poor. I'm not talking about super, I'm talking about the MS level, because I have absolutely no experience with the level Dr. Shastri and Puneet, they all reached. super liver sec, etc. I'm talking basics. I guess just an example. In one of the colleges where I went, at the end of first year's training, I asked a girl, "What's your surgical experience?" With hesitatingly said, "Sir, I have done one hernia, one appendix," at the end of 1 year. This is a kind of, I'm not saying hands-on or cutting is the only thing, but all over, many medical colleges do not have an academic atmosphere. And there are very good people in the private sector willing to teach. Dr. Sastry, I'm sure you're aware of, you're in a big metro like Hyderabad. And we should utilize these academic people more in those colleges where they're willing. Unfortunately, there are a lot of resistance. Many private colleges are headed by people, our own colleagues, they think they know the best. They're not willing to expose their students, outsiders. That's a problem you have to face. But despite that, one solution would be that you can combine the two and make use of the talent both in the private and the public sector. Thank you.
Yeah, that's definitely some food for thought. Public-private partnership in many spheres was the in-think sometime back. Successful in some, not so successful in others, mainly because of egocentric people, because of ego clashes.
Dr. Sastry, I would like to remind you that we were the first people to start this. Kasur Medical, when it started in 1953, it was attached to government Mental Hospital. We are the first in the country to have private-public partnership because we are all staff of the medical college, but we are honoraries in the Mental Hospital, government hospital. And we are doing, I worked there for 3 decades, and that is the first real private-public partnership that helped the patients in a long way. Okay.
I think it's a fantastic idea. I'm actually all for it. I've tried even in Kerala, but like Dr. Sastry said, there's a lot of turf issues there. If we put our heart and souls into it unselfishly, I think it's very good. We'll get selfish benefits as well. But if we go with selfish intents, for instance, the private sector wants to go to wean patients away, that is a bad thing. That should not be the aim. The public sector goes to look for a stepping mechanism. Again, that should not be there. But if we do it for the right reasons, actually both benefit. You gave us the examples of Mangalore. I'm aware of that. My son had briefly joined in Manipal, and the way that the Mangalore model, similar to that, if we can replicate that, it's a win-win situation. We can reduce the load on the government sector. We can have a formal, and it's not just that they learn only from the government sector. It's vice versa as well. I think the students, when they go to the private sector, they see proper communication because, how to talk to a patient, I really learned after going to a private setup only, because you want to make sure not just that it's a very subtle art of not just making sure the patient doesn't leave, but yet you have to tell every complication possible. You have to counsel him completely, be as honest to yourself as well as to the patient. So, otherwise we have this, I hear this constant refrain, oh, if I tell this, all this, the patient is going to run away. No patient has run away till now. For me, it's the other way around only. So I think a lot of things there are to learn from both sides. Both sides benefit, no doubt, hands down. But how to do it in a mature fashion without anyone ostensibly taking the advantage out of it. We've had, a lot of centers, for instance, in Delhi, one of the largest private hospitals which started was with the proviso. They got free land with the proviso that they're going to give free treatment to a lot of. So they put in a clause saying that only when the hospital is complete. So after 30 years also, hospital is not finished. So, we have to make sure that we, not just in a letter, but in spirit as well, we follow that. It's a win-win situation for everybody. I totally agree.
Professor Ananthakrishnan, would you like to say something, sir?
Nothing much, Vidya. It was great to listen to Puneet's journey. It was fortunate that he made this transition at the proper age. And to my mind, it's not such a great transition because in all matters that I know of, Amrita is very much in working like any of the other institutes, All India Institute or JIPMER or any other place. But maybe in certain aspects, it may have advantages. in terms of income, but in academics, I think it's as good as any other university and is ranked very, very high in the country. So the reverse is what is happening, and that is what worries me, that there's a constant movement of people from the academic institutions to the non-academic institutions, largely for reasons of income. And that is affecting seriously something that I'm very particularly concerned with, is the quality of education in medical institutions. So if that is going to become a flood, which I see it coming in a very short time, and with more and more medical colleges being started in every district, perhaps, that's going to cause a lot of problems to the quality of our output, both at the undergraduate and postgraduate levels. And that concerns me as much as any other aspect of education in this country. Anyway, Puneet is happy where he is. And I'm glad that he has made a transition. And I'm glad that he has found a place to his liking. And I'm sure his contribution there will be as much recognized as it was in Amrita.
Thank you, sir. We have Dr. N. Shekhar, senior vascular surgeon, who's straddled both the public and private sector over several years. Dr. Shekhar, your opinion, please. Please unmute yourself, sir.
Shekhar incidentally was my class fellow.
Yeah.
That's why he's joined. Otherwise, he wouldn't.
Hello, Shekhar. How are you?
Hi, fine. See, this is a very interesting topic. You know, I was in government sector for 25 years. So there is a lot of difference between a central institute and the state government medical colleges. You must understand that. See, like what Puneet was telling, the situation in an all-India institute level will not be replicated in government medical colleges. The problems are totally different. I actually took a voluntary retirement after 25 years. You know, the reason is, like Sastry said, we were all extremely academic, having been educated only in government, central institutes. We were very academic. We made a very good department. And the problem that I faced in the first year was not corrected till the 25th year. The same kind of problem happens in government sector. Like during the salary time, in the 30th of the month, all these class 3, class 4 fellows are drunk and they don't turn up and you have to close the voting. That kind of a situation happens in government sector. No, there is no solution to this at all. So after some time, initially you are all driven by that passion. So you're willing to undertake all the risks, going around talking to people, getting things organized, and after some time, it becomes a tedium. So that is the time I thought, I only waited till I became a professor. Then I took my voluntary retirement and I moved to private sector. But having said that, like Sastry said, academics is one thing that we miss terribly when you move to private sector, especially you're kind of academically oriented. You know, there are people who are trained only in corporate hospitals and they are perfectly fine and they blend nicely in that sector. You feel a little fish out of water in those situations. So that's one of the reasons. Now, I am reaching, Sastry and I, both of us are reaching 70 years. Now I have started a DMD course in vascular surgery in the private hospital. And now I'm full-time into academics as well. So it doesn't happen all the time, but if you're able to do that, it'll be nice. It'll be nice.
Yeah, ultimately it's a passion, individual passion, which drives yourself and your institute also. Like, for example, I'd been to Dr. Anandakrishnan's place last month. I was so pleasantly surprised. It's a private medical college, but I don't see it any different from a government, institute. A lot of government medical colleges are very bad.
Yeah.
So it's actually the theme that moving from private to public or public to private. Instead, I think what is more important is how much of, say, from an academic to a non-academic or a service-oriented sector. So that would be an interesting proposition, because their academics, although it is difficult to define which is an academic institute. All hospitals claim themselves as academic institutes and research. That and research is also added as a suffix for many hospitals. So it's difficult to say which is really an academic institute. But some of the medical colleges, particularly in Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, I have seen are extremely academic oriented. They have young faculty. They have people like Anandhakrishnan who to guide them. It made so much of difference. So much of difference to the entire medical college. The same with the other medical college, one or two other medical colleges I visited as a part of, the accreditation and things like that. So of course, I visited bad institutes also, but it's not as though, the public and private, there's a clear watertight difference. It is not. As somebody has suggested in the chat box also, you have a lot of private institutes which are really academic oriented. The Amrita, for instance, Gangaram thing, and of course CMC Vellore and St. John's, and we have many of them. The uniformity of standards, of course, is not there. So a discussion of that to move from private to public to private becomes a little superfluous.
But some movement is still a good idea to move your cheese.
Personally, yes.
Because I think we
should make a difference to the institute also, like what Dr. Anandhakrishnan did. See, that kind of difference, if it makes to an institute, it is not your selfish motive of protecting yourself from a burnout. It's not just that, but a common good with all your experience gained in a public institute. If you can put it to a private institution, it's as good as, Dr. Balal is suggesting, public-private partnership. I think that would be one solution. Now we have actually Radhakrishna who has jumped from many places, from one to other, public to private to public. I think Radhakrishna should speak his, reflections.
Actually, I'll use, Vidya gives me the last words. I'll come back to it at that time. Vidya, if you permit me, I will. Otherwise, I'll be the last.
Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
It's so nice to see so many of, my teachers, and Dr. Sastry was my chief for a while. I worked with him and had a fantastic time in Hyderabad. Of course, Puneet is a great friend, and nice to see Dr. Kapoor. It's nice to hear all these things, but I've been in corporate sector for a long, long time. And it's so nice to hear that there are certain, actually, all the institutions where private institutions where academics flourish are not really corporate hospitals. They are, semi-social service, some religion or some other issues are involved. Now, I worked in two very hardcore corporate institutions where academics are not promoted at all. I don't know, I'm a little scared to say, but the place where I work, I started an academic program, weekly academic program of all the departments coming together, and there's a big celebration. And we have a lot of stalwarts in every department. And, they all started looking forward to it. After a while, the management called me and said, for 2 hours every week, all the OPDs are coming to a standstill. Patients are waiting. We can't continue. This is what was told to me. Having said that, we also have an attached medical school. One of the reasons I shifted from one very big major hospital to the present one is because this is an attached medical college. Puneet's dream, which had come true. When I had started visiting that place, all the local doctors have a very small salary, and I have, 20 times more. And nobody liked me, actually. Their time is 8 to 2, and all of them will be waiting for the bus to take them back. Students are similar. It's not so rosy in most of the corporate sector. They are not interested in academics. Actually, frankly speaking, it's very radical to say that most private institutions, DNB is only, a paid sort of, an unpaid labor, I should say. Although the quality of DNB is a lot better than degrees in many, many colleges, but most DNB centers, it's only scut work. And this, I really do not know. In corporate sector, it's not easy to allow your DNBs to operate on your behalf. Actually, every time you have to put up a face that you're inside, or, there are so many issues. And it's not easy. And as Dr. Anandkrishnan is saying, that I think at my level, I cannot shift to a private sector. Firstly, because Dr. Sastry is mentioning, in my CV, the teaching experience bit will come. I don't know how Puneet could, Puneet's institution is recognized as a teaching hospital. See, after I've been so long, so many years post-super specialty, the institution where I worked, where they had to give me a tag, they said, you are 6 months short of a professorship. Because whatever you're going around the world added, still it is short. We can't promote you. And actually, a person who's much junior is a professor. It hurts. Getting that professor post, I thought, okay, I'll miss the bus. See, these are some of the issues in the corporate sector. So I can never come back to the public sector. Having said that, the comfort of money, I can't imagine, Puneet, how you could do that. Actually, frankly, your auditor last said, what happened? What happened to your income? Every year, your income should increase by 22%. Now it will come down by 80%. It's very difficult to explain. Okay, then only one thing I want to ask Puneet is, they say, wife is happy, life is happy. How could you convince your wife?
I think I can see her on the thing somewhere, but even when everybody told me the same thing when I was going to Cambridge as well, that how does she let you go for a year? I said, because she enjoys coming there as well, So I think it's much more fun when you actually go to different places. So I think there is some gypsy blood in me, which probably I've not only just moved, but I've enjoyed it as well. And as far as money goes, I don't think money is that bad. It's the, our perception of what you need. If you're given a decent, accommodation within the campus, the quality of life, you have to come here to see that the quality of life is far better than I would have in Delhi, maybe even Cochin, which is fantastic. I can't complain because, maybe with age, I'm able to spend more time in the department and all that. So it doesn't matter. I'm not missing all those Cochin parties and all that. I managed to make up and get COVID in the process last week. But I don't think it's what I think if we can gradually reduce our needs to what we really need. I'm very, very, inspired by a lot of the youngsters. One of Dr. Sastri's students, Anand, he's inspires me every time I meet him. I feel energized much more. There are AIMS people who started the JSS in Ganyari in Chhattisgarh. The Madras Adyar cancer people have opened up in Assam, Kachar, the Kachar Cancer Institute, Setlingi, so many other places, Gudlur. I almost joined up Gudlur actually, but Gudlur Tribal Initiative, a lot of these Abe Banks and the Gadchiroli tribal initiatives. So I'm completely, those are the people I'm really in awe of because they've managed to actually reduce their needs. So I think, imagine that we need all that. The lockdown taught me that what the question that you said, I was asking myself, will I be able to adjust in a less salary? But, I didn't even forget about close to even half my salary. In the lockdown, I couldn't finish 10,000 in a month because there's nothing to spend it on, So I think it's what the trappings we have created for ourselves. And I don't think I've enjoyed any less. I think you know me, and so I think it's been a fantastic experience, irrespective. So money does help, no doubt about it. But I was able to send my daughter to Harvard because of the money that I'd collected. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to do it. While I was sitting in AIMS, she managed to get admission, and I was able to do that. But it's just a means, and if we are not able to enjoy that, so I've seen people who've set up hereditary practices, and they don't dare step out of the confines of that practice. So are they able to enjoy that setup? I don't know. I think I've enjoyed every bit of whatever I've earned. So I think it's more important to be able to adjust to what
one other comment, Vidya, if you permit me. Dr. Shekhar is one of those unique personalities where while he was in the government sector, he was also in the private sector simultaneously. Very, very few government sector people can make it big after retirement. I'll tell you. After retirement, when you go in search of a job, actually, it's not by invitation, mostly it's by application, it goes that way. So very few can succeed like the way Dr. Shekhar has succeeded. So it's necessary that we need to get into the public sector a lot earlier, at maybe at 50s, then it becomes easy. At the same time, in private sector, after being there for long, especially corporate sector, you can't think of, I don't know with any examples of people joining from a very high profile corporate sector with reasonable salary to go off to the public sector. I mean, I don't know how Dr. Shekhar could come back to the peak, and maybe his specialty has got very few people or whatever. Yeah. Many from government sector can't make it big, they just survive.
No, see, there is one advantage in Tamil Nadu is that we were allowed practice while we were in service. So that makes a big difference. So I have always taught my students, see, if you are sincere in the medical college, government sector, you will do well in your private sector. I know people who treat patients very poorly, very badly in government sector, whereas they take utmost care in private sector, which is not a correct thing, very absolutely unethical. I have always taught people that the same kind of care you would give in a private sector, you must give it in the government sector also. That will stand in a long way. See, another thing is, I never had any education in Chennai. I was an outsider when I came here. So I needed some platform for me to be known. The medical college provided me the best. Because when I was able to do a lot of surgeries, like in fact, to tell you frankly, I was doing so much of gastroenterology during the general surgery days, that I could make a name for myself among the other surgeons and the students. That actually helped me when I moved to private sector.
Dr. Shekhar, can I add on?
Yes, sir.
I believe that practice makes you a better teacher, teaching makes you a better practitioner. They are complementary each other. Because I worked in a setup where we were allowed to work in the hospital for 5 hours. After that, of course, college is giving us a very measly salary. That's a different story. But I certainly believe that practice makes you a better teacher, teaching makes you a better practitioner. Absolutely no doubt about it.
Ravi, you wanted to say something? Your hand is up, Ravi Shankar.
Oh, I was just going to add at the very end, everybody who's spoken is a surgeon. And so I just wanted to bring in a slightly different perspective and also add that, I did a seismic change in my approach to my career as well. And so, first of all, I think Dr. Dhar did a fantastic job keeping us very nicely both entertained and informed in this hour. So thank you so much for that. But what I wanted to say is that I moved personally from, I'm a pediatric endocrinologist. I moved from an academic setting here in the United States to a industry setting. It's you've been talking about a private, corporate, and government setting. Well, this is the industry, which actually nobody talks about. It's considered the dark side, if you will, almost like the dark web. But that was a very seismic change in my attitude. And one of the things that I learned through that was that the biggest barrier for me to make that change successfully was internal. My own prejudices and my own ideas about what was right, what was wrong, and things like that. Ultimately, what helped me was to be able to look at it very objectively. And, I always like to make tables. So to make a table, what am I going to gain? What am I going to lose? That kind of situation. The only thing that I was left behind was that in the losses column was that I would no longer be able to teach, which was the biggest thing that I found very difficult, but I decided to just see how it goes. And I also, before I made the change, figured out what would happen if I didn't like it. Like, could I come back? What were my other options at that point? So I had some plans B, C, D, etc. And although I didn't wait till 57 to make the change, I was fairly on the older side when I made the change to industry compared to many of the other people who were already there. The other thing that I got from making this change is that it's always important to go towards something that the new place gives you something that you have not had in your previous career, instead of running away from something. Running away never works, because whatever you're running away from always catches up with you. So, and I've had a few colleagues from academia who made the change to industry with me, who were actually running away, and they couldn't last. They just couldn't hack it. So it was very that was another important lesson that I had learned. And of course, the final thing that I wanted to say, just like Dr. Dhar and everybody else mentioned, it keeps you on your toes. You're doing something new. You're doing something that is entirely so different. But at the same time, I think I made this comment once before. Everybody is afraid that you're going into something new. How will you be able to succeed? And I just wanted to say, if there are any young, physicians watching this, surgeons watching this, do not underestimate yourself. Do not underestimate the capacity of someone who's trained to be a physician to be able to do anything in this world. Because, we are trained to take people's lives in our hands and make, instantaneous decisions for them. I mean, with that kind of training, with that kind of mindset, there's really nothing that we will not be able to do. So that's the point that I need, that, I hopefully everybody understands from these kind of talks, so that people, get over that fear. And that, like I said, that internal fear, that prejudice is basically what holds back people, not just in changing careers, in practically any sort of big decisions people take. And I think it should be very clear to people that anybody can do this. And finally, I wanted to give a shout out to Dr. Bilal. Mangalore brought back memories of my time in Suratkal when I was a middle school student. So, just wanted to say that was a pleasant blast from the past. Thank you, Vidya.
Ilango, you're probably at an age where you can actually do lateral shifts. So, what did you get out of today?
So, two direct questions to Dr. Puneet Dhar. I've been following his photography. I actually killed my hobby, and I left all my lenses in a large shelf. I don't know how he managed to do it throughout his career in AIIMS. And I know Unikrishnan, we grew up together as MS postgraduates in Trivandrum, and we both had the same passion. And Uni was able to reignite it when he came back to AIIMS, and I had to really kill my love for photography. How did you manage to do that? And it's a very expensive hobby, and probably a private practice really helps in keeping the hobby alive. How did you manage to do that? That's a direct question.
So, I mean, I think where there's a will, there's a way. So both in private practice as well as in government service, there's a way. Don't kill me for this, but it's still legal. But all lenses are, tax deductible. So so while in private practice, I was able to do that. When you're in government service, AIIMS has this fantastic learning resource allowance, NRA, which if you combine them year after year, you can collect lenses as well. So I think if you have a passion, you can choose within that as well. So yes, it is expensive, but I don't think as expensive as if I go around even in the Ames Rishikesh car park. I see all fancy cars, much fancier than mine. So it's what you're passionate about. So it depends on what you really like. At the end of the day, we do have to drive the economy one way or the other, isn't it?
Ilango, you need to be nailed because this whole conversation is not about the hobbies. Hobbies are part of it, but there you are. I
had this doubt.
Don't tell me. No. I also keep watching you, and I often feel that your saturation level keeps falling. You're breathless in corporate sector. I'm bold enough to talk against anything, but are you comfortable? See, Puneet, me and Ilango had to come onto the web because here nobody can stop into the academic activity. Because what I couldn't do in my life, I come over here. Ilango, you have to talk about that topic. Don't talk about cycling or bird watching.
Okay.
So, I think you should allow him to ask his second question. You can't.
One of the things I missed was teaching. When I finished my MS General Surgery, my stipend was 2,500 rupees. I was deep in debts, so I had no choice. When I was offered a job, I said, I just cannot manage. It was 6,000 rupees and I just could not pay off my debts. So I had to go to private practice. It was not big money, hardly just double that amount in Trivandrum, but that was enough to meet my needs. That's how I lost. I still have that regrets, but I think I'm far out to getting into the academic stream. I still love teaching. I break down subjects, I teach algorithms, I teach whoever is willing to listen to me, whether it is a student, a student nurse, or whoever is willing to listen, I still teach. And I keep my passion going. I still do my time in my own private time to write down things for better understanding of the students. But all that does not actually count in India. It's a problem. But like you discussed, there is no opportunity for people like me to come back to an academic stream and be interested in teaching the next generation of students. Patta Radhakrishna sir is very clear that the web has really opened up an opportunity for us to discuss our ideas. See, one of the reasons I just can go on record. I really felt that the Indian Association of Surgical Gastroenterology has completely lost its edge in academic teaching in any of the conferences, and I have not seen any new blood coming in, nor new ideas being infused, and I see the same speakers over and over again. I stopped even coming there. I don't listen to the lectures anymore. It's much more easy to listen to better lectures from across the world in any place in the universities. But I don't know how to overcome this. This gap I will always feel. But rather than ranting about it, we thought we'll really do something about it. Even though we may not be able to make an actual difference in the lives of students, we may at least pave the way. I think LGS as a group, we are very much focused on this to bring out the true meaning of teaching, what we felt as necessary. When I stepped out of each one of the postgraduate degrees, whatever I missed, I still tried to teach. I had a good opportunity. I don't know whether I'm pushy or not, but every time there was a problem, every time I felt there was a gap, my wife was willing to pitch in and spend all our savings and take me out to the next level. So we could move to Ernakulam for a brief time. And I moved to Chennai for doing MCH, and then from there on to UPMC to do my transplant fellowship. Each time we spent all our savings, sold our house, moved like that. We took that seriously. We really enjoyed it, but that's only a personal pleasure. We realized that the system in an academic program in India is completely sealed, and it's not driven towards training the next generation of doctors, but rather its own self. We miss it. And again, sometimes I feel we may not be able to make a difference in the academic program. So I listened to your lecture with a lot of interest and love, but I feel I missed the bus a long time ago.
I'm not sure about that entirely, because, for instance, in the NB webinar sessions, they've given a free hand for us to call anybody, and it's not. I'm actually a little sad that you're saying like that, because I really feel we must get back people like you into the academic circles, and I'm personally going to take a lot of efforts for that. I found so many people. I mean, H. Ramesh is one of the most academic people in our association. He takes time out for every PG class that we have. He doesn't have any experience in formal teaching as far as the requirement for a medical college is concerned. That hasn't stopped him. Adarsh, he's getting younger day by day. So I think from Medanta, I'll see him subsequently in another. So I think we need to make sure that people like you do get back to academics. And I think you've given me some food for thought for what else we need to do. So you're definitely going to be there on the NB webinar sessions. So be warned. I think, in fact, we need to move away from what you're saying. We need to reinvent ourselves. We have 1,000 exams all over the country. We should probably, it's high time we moved like the Royal College or to a combined exam system, So I think we need to move that way.
Thank you, sir.
Vidya, I'll just have one question to Dr. Ballal. His idea of private-public cooperation is wonderful, and Dr. Sastry is also seconding it. But I'll tell you, in a city of Chennai, for instance, the best HPV surgeon is in the private sector. The best laparoscopy surgeon in the private sector. The best pancreatic surgeon in the private sector. None of them are ever invited or allowed to take an hour's class in the government sector. Then all of them are willing. Elam will be too willing to spend half a day there. Closed, sealed. If some dent can be made at some level, if all the seniors can work on that, that would be a great, great thing.
But, I must tell you my own experience. I've been to Vellore.
We can't hear you, sir, Dr. Bala.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Right. This is my own personal experience with reference to Chennai only. I was in Vellore for a CME program. Along with that, a professor from one of the colleges had come down, and we drove back together to Chennai, and he said, sir, next week we're going to have a CME program. Could you come and take participate? Because my daughters are here, I was spending some time in Chennai. Unfortunately, as Patta put it, that invitation never came. Then I remember reading a sentence a long time ago, which I put in my own book, that somebody has written that surgeons are the most egocentric people in the world. And this personal ego of many of these colleges. The reason is with due apologies. I'm not make a personal issue. With due apologies, they know their limitations in the private colleges, and they do not want better people to come and expose their weakness in front of students. I'm sorry to say this, but the sad fact of life. They do not want. And that invitation never came. Then some of the PGs came home because they knew through some source that I was in Chennai. And I cannot divulge more details because it's embarrassing to mention the name of the gentleman concerned or the colleges. But this is a fact of life. We have to accept that there is very little cooperation. But my dream is to see a day where private and public can join together for the benefit of the, because otherwise, as has been said so often, Antakrishna put it beautifully well. The future generation of doctors are going to be really, I don't know, what will be their status. Thank you.
I think that's
don't you think it's inevitable now, since the government is going to open up medical colleges in every district and all, it's going to be humanly impossible for the government to man all those places. So I think the public-private partnership will be the only solution. What do you think, Dr.
Thinking. Puneet, you're saying something.
No, I think it's absolutely spot on. It's very narrow-minded to think like that, because I think for your own students, if they're exposed to the wider exposure they get, the better they're going to be, and the better your name is going to be, as their teacher. So I think it's a very narrow-minded. It's a stupid, not egoistic, or also actually it is self-defeating. So I think that's why those people have not grown, and we've seen the people who grow are the ones who have a much wider outlook, isn't it?
But Puneet Saab, one thing I find that passion for teaching has become much less compared to our generation. I'm sorry to say that.
You're probably, sir, I think that's, I didn't cover that point, but it's the role models. No, you're absolutely right. One of Dr. Sastri's first students actually told me, I don't understand how he can manage in Nizam's salary. I can't. That guy was asked, MCH student, very, very bright guy, but I think he chased the money bit, and the entire brightness is no use, I feel, because we're not able to utilize that. So I think it's important that we look at good role models as well, and that's one of the things I didn't want to say it very pompously, but I hope that if I could be even half of what all these people have been for me, it would be encouraging such people. So I think we need to be good role models on ourselves. So if we make out that the fast cars and that is the only important thing in our life, that's what we're going to teach the students as well. But if they see if Ilango can go back to his lenses as well, Uni also actually went back to it after a long gap within the department when we were going out for birding and all that. So I sincerely hope to see Ilango in the field as well. So yes,
sir, I went on a scooter for 6 years before I bought my first car. As a reader in surgery, I was going on a scooter to the medical college. After 6 years,
it's absolutely, sir. It's a requirement. All of us. Till I had 2 kids, I was on a mobike with handling them in between. And like Ilango said about the Anand has not taken any loan on any house or car. He said that I want to reduce my needs, because the rental in all those places are 5,000 even now. So you don't even need to you don't have to be in Bangalore paying 50,000 or Chennai paying huge houses. You have fantastic places, much more closer to nature, much less polluted. So I mean, it's up to us what we find is important, and not be dictated by other people's feeling of what is important in life.
Yeah, exactly. Ultimately, it's your own selfish motives, your passions, which will decide what you want to be. Frustrations are common. Yeah, you do feel frustrated if you don't get invited to this place, that place, yes. But there are many instances where you find a person who is potentially a good speaker. You invite him and he doesn't come. It happens to me. Now, even of our web clinics on Monday mornings, or even for our MBE programs, you have one senior and one junior, to balance, so that the junior consultant also gets trained into the teaching activity. I think that is the way to go about, not occupy the place, the seniors occupying the place forever. But that is much less these days than what it used to happen earlier. Even in IASG, for that matter, you see a lot of young blood speaking. You have a variety. It's difficult to please everybody, but then I think IASG is definitely one of the few associations meetings which are very well attended, and where the participants stay put in the auditorium, not outside, like in, say, general surgery, ASIs and things like that. IHPBA is another one. Definitely, the standards are definitely good and better. They can definitely be better. But then, when multiple people with ego centers are involved, it takes all sorts to make a bird. You have to, be satisfied with the average of all, while hoping for the best. You don't leave the best for not to happen, but then you give a chance to everybody and see that all of us flourish together.
Thank you everyone for logging in. Thank you, Dr. Puneet Dhar, for sparing your time, and Dr. Sastry for keeping the discussion going so active. As you all know, the latest initiative of learning general surgery is Let's Learn Surgery on pedagogy in surgery. And we had some technical issues last time, but we hope to see you all next Tuesday.
I just want to inform the JIPMO group that Dr. Chandrasekhar is not doing well. He was got COVID and he's been hospitalized. The 30% lung involvement. He was being all a teacher. So just for information. Yeah, back to you.
So on Tuesday, 8 o'clock, we'll be having a session by Dr. V. Balasubramaniam, who's a professor of anatomy at St. John's Medical College. And he will be speaking on anatomy education for surgeons, winds of change. And as usual, on Thursdays, we'll have our, at 8 p.m., we'll join again for another episode of Marvelous Medicine. With the Omicron raging, I really hope that all of you stay safe. Good night. We'll meet again on Tuesday.
Thank you, Vidya, for the wonderful opportunity. I really enjoyed. Thanks, Puneet.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, it's a novel encounter virtually. We always meet. We never meet virtually like this. Thanks, Radhakrishna. It was wonderful.
It's nice seeing you, sir. We hope you join all our sessions if you find time. Thanks, Puneet. Thanks, everyone.